Welcome to Decades of Horror, the classic era.
No one can love you as much as we do. You know that.
This is episode 108, recorded September 12th, 2021.
Gruesome Magazine.
I am your host, Jeff Mohr. On this podcast, we cover the good, the bad, and maybe even the ugly horror films released since the beginning of time through 1969. In each episode, we'll discuss the monsters, psychos, spirits, villains that have haunted movie-going audiences since the dawn of film history. This podcast, we'll start off by giving you some basic details of the film we're covering, followed by each of our first impressions of the film, and then we'll move into general discussion on whatever trips our trigger, hopefully about the film. With me this week are my incredible co-hosts, Whitney Collazo, makeup artist, and writer. Whitney, how are you?
I'm great. I corrupted my nephews today with what we're about to discuss.
Yes.
You watched it with them? All right.
How old are they?
Gosh, so I don't know if I should be too proud, but I guess I don't know. People are gonna judge you no matter what. But they're 3 and
3 and what?
5. 3 and 5.
Okay.
2 thumbs up. Yeah.
Excellent. That's probably about when I first saw it, and those images stayed with me all this time.
Nice.
Next up, we have Daphne, the awesome, stupendous, and likable as hell. How are you, Daphne?
I'm real good. I'm excited to talk with you guys about this movie.
Yeah, me too. Last up is Bill Mulligan, writer, director, special effects guru, all-around nice guy, and
Bava head.
We are proclaiming him a Bava head. Yeah.
I got the call yesterday. We're at a family get together, and it's like, ding! It's like, would you like to do a thing tomorrow? I'm like, well, that's short notice. It's about Bava. Yes. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you here. And Chad Hunt is not able to make it today, which we will. I miss Chad.
Yeah.
But hopefully he will be back next time. So our film today, this episode, is Black Sabbath, 1963. Now, is that like not the creepiest picture?
Oh,
Yeah.
It's creepy.
Lord. So Bava too. Directed by Mario Bava. Written by Marcello Fondato with the collaboration of Mario Bava and Alberto Bevilacqua. Cast includes Boris Karloff, Mark Damon, Susie Anderson, Jacqueline Peru, and Michelle Mercier. Filming locations at the Titanus Farnesina Studios in Rome. It was filmed February 27th to March 31st, 1963, and released in Italy on August 23rd, 1963, but not until May 6th, 1964 in the U.S. The budget was about $330,000, and the box office was $167,000 in Italy and $419,000 in U.S. rentals. The synopsis: this is a trio of horror stories concerning a stalked call girl, a vampire-like monster who preys on his family, and a nurse who is haunted by her ring's rightful owner. I just have to look at that. That picture just looks like a painting. It's just
that's every frame of this
shadows.
film is like a painting.
It really is.
Especially in that sequence, in that story.
Yeah, so an anthology.
A portmanteau.
T. Portmanteau. Toe. Tau. English is so hard. So Bill whipped up some overlays here. So here's some of the posters. Now, the top one is a sort of a landscape version of the most common U.S. one.
And bafflingly, neither of these really pushes the fact that Karloff is in it, which is kind of odd because he was very popular at this time. This is kind of
Yeah.
late in the game, but they were showing Thriller on TV, and Karloff's popularity had its ebbs and flows. He never really collapsed the way Lugosi did, but he was now like the grand old man of horror cinema. So I'd put him front and center were I advertising this one.
Well, we have large cap letters, but that's about
do.
it. And as per usual, we have a scene that never happens in the movie. There's no headless horseman riding, carrying his head, and it doesn't happen. And then I believe this is the French poster, and pretty much all the other AKAs translate to the Three Faces of Fear, right?
Which was the Italian title, I guess. That's a beautiful poster. That's
it
fun.
is.
I put that on my wall.
The hands, yeah.
Yeah, the hands are awesome.
Yes.
And then this is one.
Okay, I take it back. Now Karloff is front and center.
I know.
And
Even though
it doesn't look. I mean, none of this happens either. Okay,
No.
so
I don't know. For some reason, we have to have a headless horseman. That never happens.
Yeah.
I kept looking at this poster or the images of that, and I'm just like, wait, no,
Yeah.
huh?
And it does seem like they definitely draw that head to look like Karloff, but his head never leaves his body either. But it's still kind of cool. It's definitely
That's awesome.
Both of those
again, right on the wall.
Memorable. And then this, I believe, is that Spanish or Italian? I'm kind of lame here.
Los tres caras del miedo. The Three Faces.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Three Faces of Fear.
Yeah.
That's a nice poster. Gives away a little too much, but
got a
we do
little
have
piece of
Karloff.
each story, right? So it works.
Okay.
Actually, that one's true. Everything on that one is true. Right?
Nice.
Cats have made their appearance.
I like.
They're definitely appropriate in this one.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm this was Chad's pick, which makes it doubly big a pain that, or how do I want to say? It's not
I
a
hate it when
tragedy.
that happens when
It's
you
too
pick a
bad
film and
that
then you
he's
can't
here.
be there to defend it.
It really is. So, and I'm going to let, because Bill knows so much about Bava, I'm going to let Whitney and Daphne go first. And then Bill can
Don't get me started.
do cleanup. So
God.
I actually kind of want to hear about Whitney and her nephews. So
My God. Okay, so I started to get involved in this morning because they had spent the night. Like, I'm going to watch this movie because yesterday was a long day with them, and I'm like, they're not going to be in the mood. I was wrong. Oh my God, I was wrong. So I started to put this on and chill out, and then my youngest nephew sat in my lap, like, I want to watch it with you. I said, it's kind of scary, buddy. He said, well, I want to watch it anyway. So my oldest nephew, Otto, he's 5. He's sat next to us for a little while. He wasn't consistent, but the one who stuck with me the whole time was my 3-year-old nephew, Dominic. I think he's going to be more of a horror fan. So it was cool for me to watch this because I've only seen pieces. I've never seen this anthology in full. The one that I remember the most was the first that stood out, the first story.
yeah, the drop of water. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a very
So they're what? The drop of water, the telephone, and the Wurdulak.
Yeah, the drop. So yeah, the first one. But anyway, he stuck with me the whole time, and he was enamored, totally enamored. And he had some commentary I'll discuss along the way.
I'll bet.
Okay.
But yeah, fast.
Oh, I love it.
It was a big.
love
It
it.
was a big hit, huh?
It was a big hit on Dominic. I think I'm so proud. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you.
All right.
fun.
Thanks. Daphne, how about you? Had you seen this before, and what are your impressions?
Yeah, I've seen it before. I couldn't tell you the first time I saw it, but I know I rewatched it a few years ago, and then I watched the Italian version and the dubbed version for this, and realized I don't think I've ever seen the dubbed version, and it was really kind of blew my mind hearing Boris Karloff's voice, and how different that is than having him dubbed. I mean, that seems kind of weird having him dubbed
in Italian,
way to
yeah.
describe it, but missing his voice, Boris Karloff's voice. But there are things that I definitely don't like the American version of so much, but it was kind of cool to realize that oh my gosh, I haven't seen this in the American version, and kind of look at it from that different perspective. So that was the first time for me, but I had seen it before, and I really like it. And I think I forgot how much I liked it. And actually, I think I appreciate it more now since I've started listening to you guys and talking with you and learning about Bava. It actually really kind of enhanced my experience when I was watching it. So that made it a whole nother, it was just really nice to watch it again. Yeah.
Cool. I have to ask, are those Halloween lights behind you, or peppers, or?
Those are peppers, but I do have my Halloween. But if I were to turn the camera, you would see Halloween lights, because we have already decorated the Halloween stuff.
It's almost October.
Right.
Yeah, it's September. It's it's fair.
It's getting cooler outside a little.
Cool. All right. Well, let's hear from Bill Mulligan.
I don't remember when I first saw this film. I mean, there was a point when Mario Bava was one of the first filmmakers that made that little click in my brain that it's not just random that some horror movies are better than others. There are certain people that if they're involved, it's going to be a good movie. Everyone has that artistic person. Ray Harryhausen was another one. And then you start seeking them out. And I don't know when I first saw this. I've seen it many times since. What I'm puzzled by is it seems like it was only recently that I would have even had the opportunity to see the Italian version, but evidently that's the only version that has the famous trick ending. And I don't know if it's a false memory, a Mandela effect thing, that I had read about the trick ending in Famous Monsters of Filmland and in some other places. So I felt like I had seen it, but I had never actually seen it until I finally saw the Italian version. I feel like that's relatively recent. But I feel like that's not the case, because in my brain, and this again may be a false memory, that ending is one of the things that really kind of clicked in my mind, that I not only wanted to watch all the horror movies I could, but I wanted to be in on the action, because that little glimpse of seeing how a magician does their secrets, and you're like just blown away that, it's one thing when you see someone get chainsawed in half, it's a special effect because union rules won't allow you to do that. But when you see something, like a guy on a horseback, you just figure, well, they had a guy on a horseback and another guy on a horseback, only he had a camera. And then you find out, no, it's a whole lot easier to just trick your brain into thinking there's a guy on a horseback running through the woods than to actually film it. And it's just like, well, what else is not real here? I mean, that's just such a cool thing. I know it's a controversial ending. A lot of people hated it. American International, for one. But to me, that's just so Bava, and he's great on that. So this is one of my favorite Bava films, although almost all of Bava's films are my favorite Bava film at some point or another. And I'm glad. Thank you very much for letting me talk about it. So,
no, I'm glad. I wish Chad was here. But,
now I can't watch the American International one because I know how much they changed, especially in the telephone.
Yeah.
But I do miss Karloff's voice. And it got me to think, it's like, why did they not at least try to do an Italian guy doing Karloff's voice? But then it occurs to me, if you lived in Italy, you never heard Karloff's voice ever, 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 any more than, I assume they were all dubbed into Italian. How many... Did they know what Lugosi sounded like? And when you think of Lugosi and Karloff, their voices were the most distinctive thing about them, even more than their look. Maybe not with Karloff, but it's interesting. So that takes a little getting used to, and I'd love to be able to. Maybe someone will do a composite someday where they put in Karloff speaking English and everybody else doing it. But yeah, Italian's the way to go on this one.
Yeah. I would completely agree with you. And it's one of those, I hate it. I hate when I research something, like I'm going to go buy something and I can't find any one thing that has all the features I want. It's
right.
It becomes a hard choice. And this is kind of like that. I love Karloff in this, is unbelievable. And his voice adds so much to it. But the Italian version, I think, is superior in terms of the storytelling, and there's some extra scenes put into the Wurdulak that don't need to be there.
The music changed too.
Yeah, the music changed quite a bit. In fact, well, we could probably just start talking about that. But first, so I love this. The impression that I have of this from the first time I see this is, of course, I remember the face from The Drop of Water, the old woman in the bed. But my impression of where that was at from when I was younger was a totally different place. Like it was part of the Wurdulak story somehow. In my from watching it as a child and then watching it later. And this is something I need to watch this a lot more. And I'm going to agree with Daphne that doing these podcasts has really made me watch movies differently. And this is an amazing movie. This might actually be jumping up to one of my favorites.
Cool.
It just, as I was searching the images and things, there's just so many, and Bill said it too. They're all like artist paintings. Just every shot is just unbelievably, composed and colored. And I've come to and I didn't remember anything from the telephone segment from the very first time I saw it. So maybe I didn't see that part. I don't know. But you got to be careful when you talk about this, because between, Italian and English versions are entirely, they're not even in the same order. Right.
Right. The telephone's a completely different story.
So let's stop for just a second, because I forgot the taglines.
Oh, always a favorite.
Bill, anybody can read them. We usually have Chad do it, but and he's the best. But if
he is, let me go find
Daphne want to read a tagline, that's cool too.
Sure.
You want everybody to take a shot? I'll go first. This is the night of the nightmare, the day of the undead.
Night of the nightmare. Okay.
The most gruesome day in the calendar of the undead.
Not have you seen such horror?
You could have the last one, Bill.
A story that goes beyond the boundaries of the supernatural to the half-world of the living dead, where a woman's soul inhabits a fly's body, where vengeance is only a voice, where vampires suck only the blood of those they love dearest. Yeah. Those aren't bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is.
We've read far worse.
So let's I don't know if I want to. I guess we can go through. Let's kind of go through each segment, I guess, and talk about the actors, the actresses. I just wanted to throw this up because we don't. There's a couple of people that, and I'll bring it up again in The Drop of Water, but the telephone is the first one in the Italian version, correct?
Yeah, which I agree with, because although I like the Italian version better, I think it's the weakest of the three. I think Italian version still pretty good, and actually, watching it again this time, I liked it a whole lot better than I remember liking it. But of the three, I think it's the weakest, and I think you should start with the weak one and work your way up to the better one.
Yeah.
So the woman in green is Mary, played by Lydia Alfonsi, and she's a friend, and depending on which version you watch, is what kind of friend is she?
A close friend.
I don't know.
Not a good friend.
No.
A bad friend. A really bad friend. You do not need
And then
friends like
the lead is Michelle Mercier,
Rower.
plays Rosie. So we've got basically the whole film is Rosie and Mary, or the whole segment is Rosie and Mary and Frank,
And
who we
a
only
phone.
see for a minute, and the phone. Well, you're right. The phone is a big character.
I agree with Bill. It's the least of the three, in my opinion. And I've heard people refer to it as kind of like a little bit of a giallo, which is probably true. But the Italian is definitely way better story, or at least in my opinion, it got my attention and tricked me and sucked me in, and I enjoyed it a little bit more, the Italian version than the American version, though they both work. But least of the three, but in my opinion, the Italian version is better. So I basically duplicate everything that Bill just said. I was just blown away. Because like I said, I don't remember seeing the American version before, because I do not remember that at all. And I was just really stunned with how different, just these little changes, how different it made the story. And it's
very
was
creatively
really
done. It's just that when you think about it, if you pause to think about it, you're like, why does a ghost die when you stab him? Why is a ghost peeking through the curtains? Why? Doesn't really work.
It's funny you say that, because I did the American version with my nephews this morning, and after breakfast, they like to have their bags of chips, and Dominic is like, Rosie just needs to get out of there. I mean, and
she does.
From the mouths of babes.
And when what she did to Frank, he said, "You can't just kill a ghost."
See, this is why 5-year-olds aren't in horror movies, because they're not as dumb as teenagers and all.
I love the little commentaries here and there, because I'm watching this, and then my 3-year-old nephew, he's like, it's Frank, and then they're like, I'm like, yeah, let's watch and see what's going on here. And then when she kills him, and he says, you can't just kill a ghost. What's wrong here? It's funny.
Yeah.
I just felt like the story was so much better when I didn't know what was going on. Like when I was kind of thrown a little bit for a loop. It's like, oh, but wait, there was someone looking through. Was that Mary? What's going on? And
it didn't look like Mary. So even that doesn't make sense in the Italian version. Apparently Frank is like waiting a ridiculously long time to make his move. So
right, because we do get that. So in the Italian version, just to give a little bit of background, I'll try to be concise, but Mary and Rosie were an item, and then Rosie broke up with Mary to go with Frank, but then Rosie ratted on Frank, and that sent him to prison. So now Frank has escaped from prison and has vowed to come get Rosie. Rosie calls up Mary, her old flame, to come sit with her or help her, right? In the American version, it's Frank's dead, and she's getting these phone calls. So she calls up Mary, her friend, who she, apparently didn't spend much time with since she started going with Frank. I don't know. They don't really talk about that. But there's weird, and then at the end, Frank comes in, kills Mary, and then heads for Rosie, and Rosie has a knife and kills him. So in the first one, she's killing a guy who escaped from prison. In the second one, she's killing a dead guy.
Makes no sense.
Right.
And then when he dies, the phone that's off the hook, right? So, and then you hear the voice going, I'm still here. I'm still coming for you.
Well, now he actually is a ghost, so that
Right.
makes
Yeah,
some
so
sense, I
maybe.
guess.
Well, it kind of makes sense if you look at the story as kind of like more of a ghost story, a kind of like a weird tales, strange tales kind of a vibe to it.
Right.
It doesn't explain the killing Frank if he's a ghost already or whatever, but it does kind of give that a little bit. But
Yeah.
That's what hooked my nephews for this
Mhm.
one, is because, like you said, it's a ghost story. And it was funny because when they sat and watched it, this one lost Otto, my 5-year-old nephew, a little bit, but Dominic loves ghost stories. 3-year-old, he said, "Is this one a ghost story too?" I said, "Let's find out. Let's find out."
I like it.
I like it. My youngest grandson, the first thing he always asked was, whoever came on screen was, is he a good guy or a bad guy?
Yeah.
And then the next person on the screen, is he a good guy or a bad guy? It's like,
Yeah,
More characters should ask that question themselves.
right.
he should.
But even in the Italian version, it's okay. So we learned pretty early on, actually, that the phone calls are coming from Mary, who can disguise her voice. Oh, nice trick. So you have to buy the incredible coincidence that Mary is setting up her friend, and then
yeah.
Frank actually does show up. So it's the
Mhm.
old, we're pretending that there's a monster, but then the monster actually shows up.
Mhm.
But
But he does have a motive, right?
He does, yeah, and it is plausible
Mhm.
because he did actually escape it. So I guess Mary
Mhm.
found out he escaped from jail and said, "This is my chance to
Mhm.
make this move,"
Well,
and it backfired badly.
they go so far as, so what else? There's the guy in the American version. There's the neighbor walking his dog.
The
And that's
Colonel,
not it.
I think. or
Yeah,
something.
that's not in the Italian version.
Hmm.
There's nobody else there. And she encounters him, and he's like, "What's the matter with you? You can tell me. I'm a good guy." She just so, anyway.
That's what a bad guy would say.
Then she gets the envelope under her door. In the Italian version, it's
Like just a newspaper clipping.
a newspaper. Yeah, that says this guy escaped.
Mhm.
Now in the Italian version, or in the English version, it has on the back side of it is a newspaper clipping, but the front side is a plain sheet of white paper that has magic writing on it.
Mhm.
That appears like Frank is writing it, like, and yeah, and then the same thing happens at the end when Mary's writing the note. She sedates Rosie to help her sleep. And in the Italian version, I can't remember if she knew it in the Italian version or not, but she's writing.
She tells her that it's a sedative, and she
Okay.
drinks it anyway. Mary's not the sharpest knife in the kitchen drawer.
Rosie.
Rosie.
Yeah. So, yeah, but she writes her a note saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was the one that was calling you, and I hope you don't hold it against me." And blah, blah,
Who would
blah.
hold that against you?
I just
Come
wanted
on.
to get back with you and everything. And in the other one, I forget what she's writing in the English version.
But she said she sedated her so that she would be able to talk to us like a psychoanalyst or
later.
something
Yeah.
about her that she needs help.
Because she thinks Frank's alive or isn't dead, or Frank's calling her. Yeah. So there's just these weird little tricks they put in there that.
Mhm.
Now, the thing I like about the Italian version, to me, that's a great example of that's like, well, you tell me, Bill, but to me, that's like Giallo.
Oh, what Daphne said about Giallo, and
It's a
again,
straight
I
mystery,
had never hit me before, but when she has the black gloves, reaches
Yes.
in and pulls out the knife and just pauses to let the light shine, and I'm thinking to myself, Dario Argento saw this shot and decided this is how he was going to spend the rest of his life.
Lucas.
Just making a movie with that shot over and over again.
Lucas says in the commentary, and here is the first example of Giallo. Right before that happens. And it's just like a little flash, But
and then a few years
also,
later, of course, Bava would make Blood and Black Lace and, definitely put his mark on the claim to have invented Giallo.
But I thought that was interesting. And the music, okay, so the English version.
Les Baxter.
It's Les Baxter, and Les Baxter's a good guy. He did tons of AIP stuff.
He didn't have a lot of time to work on this.
Yes, and the telephone, I swear, it sounded to me like some variation on what would have been the background for an episode of The Saint. you know, with Roger Moore.
Mm.
Like I expected it to switch into da 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 da. You know, it was
Yeah.
just this weird sort of half jazzy, half kind of.
Even the Italian version's a little jazzy, but
It's
is.
a lot
It is.
jazzy in my opinion.
yeah, but the American version's too television movie, too on the nose, like telegraphing everything.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
subtlety gets lost.
But
Well, the
I
thing
like that. I'm sorry.
Jeff,
I
go
just
ahead.
like the ending a whole lot better. The whole gist in the Italian version, the idea that it's a guy coming. And the thing that makes it kind of neat is that so Mary was doing this underhanded thing to trick Rosie and to getting back into Rosie's life. In the end, she ends up dead, but the fact that she did that probably saved Rosie's life because she's
Definitely
the
putting the knife under the pillow.
put the
helped,
knife
yeah.
under the pillow. So,
Mm-hmm.
but when it's a ghost, you know, now nobody wins. I guess nobody won the other one. So they're all pretty dark.
It just struck me how different from the other two stories this was, which is why I really felt like I hadn't thought about the Giallo thing before either. But then when I watched it, the American version, I was like, okay, yeah, to me, this is like an excellent definition. I guess someone didn't know what Giallo was. Someone just said mystery, killer, sex, violence. That's it. And I feel like that totally got it in the American version. That was all that it was. It wasn't, you know, even though there was a ghost in it, it just was so different than the other two. I kind of, and the jazz in the Italian one, if you think of it more as Giallo, I feel like I can kind of, I'm not so distracted by it. But if I try and compare it to the other two as an anthology, I get a little bit confused. Like, what's going on with this? It's a really interesting. It's interesting how there's things that I love so much about one, and then seeing the American version, it's like, oh yeah, that's better or that's worse, but you can't make the perfect one.
Look how pretty this is, and his use of color.
Black
Sunday's a beautiful film, black and white, and you say, "Oh, I wish every film was in black and white." And then you see Bava do color, and you're like, "I wish Black Sunday had been in color." You know, she lives in this house that's in all this gold and muted, you know, tans and everything, and the things that are standing out, the red phone, the green dress, you know, it's like he's using color. These are the elements that are invading, and all three of them actually
the shadow on the ceiling in that top picture too. It's just.
Well,
and when Frank is walking toward her, and he uses, like, he walks, and then the light's on one side of his face, and he passes into shadow, and then it's the other side. I mean, these are simple things, but when you see them, they're so well done. You're like, oh, I wish I'd done that in whatever movie I was involved with because it looks so good. He was a real master of composition and lighting and color.
And it's so subtle, but so very strong. It's like I'm so glad you have pictures of that suit, because that suit is gorgeous and the color is striking, and it's different from all the other muted hues in her apartment, like you said, except for the phone. And the fur, I mean, I was like looking at everything, like the fur on the blanket, the fur on the collar of Mary's neck, the kind of the upholstery on the couch. There's like all this texture, all this kind of, and then that totally goes into the sensuality of both these characters, the sexuality of these characters. And you can't, like, I wouldn't go and say, oh yeah, this is obviously this or that, but it just all kind of blends together in this beautiful kind of palette. And then even like in the kitchen, when the light changes in the window, and at first time I saw it, I thought, what's going on there? And it's like, oh, is it time change? Is it representing time change? And I mean, just the colors in there, it's just so beautiful. And
there is a lot to analyze. If you're a film student, you got to do a paper. You could do worse than Bava. I mean, just the whole, I mean, Bava was a master of sex and death without having to be really overt about the sex part, because you weren't allowed to be. But just the opening scene is she's taking off her stockings, and it's really sexy shot. Well, those are the stockings that Frank later uses to strangle Mary.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There you go. There's sex and death in its purest form.
And the thing that I like about it is that you don't even have to analyze it. Your body just picks up on these things. Your body just is like, ooh, what's going on? And then afterwards, maybe you think about it and you just kind of like think, oh, there's this and that. But your body reacts to it. And it's amazing. It's really, really cool and amazing.
No, what was funny for me to see with the stockings and picking up on that, like seeing her remove the stocking and then later seeing that. But when watching that, I'm like, I feel like there's going to be something with this later on. And my nephew, the smallest one, he's like, why are we watching? Why'd they do that? Why are they doing this? I'm like, well, we'll find out. And then later he's like, oh, he killed her with the saw.
He's awesome.
That's right.
This kid's going to be on a podcast real soon.
That's right.
He's way ahead of where I was at 5 or 3 or whatever.
Well,
wow.
The thing that hit me too is when she goes over and gets the knife out of the drawer, because you don't really know what's going on, especially in the Italian version. You know that she's hoodwinked her, so you're not really sure what her motive is. And I'm thinking, what the hell? She still has her gloves on, because she's been there a while. She's talked to her and stuff, and so I actually backed up to see. Yeah, she had them on when she came in, and she never took them off until she hides the knife, and then she says, "Give me a nightgown," and you know. So it's not overt. It's not an overt lesbian relationship either. There's just a couple of comments you catch in the Italian version.
Pretty hot for 1963, but
well, but it was
it.
bad enough for AIP, because they said, well, we don't want no lesbian stuff in there, and can't we switch this to a ghost instead of anyway.
Yeah.
Good
Bava
stuff.
was okay with that as long as they let him release the version he wanted in Italy. It's like, I guess you had to accept the fact the Americans were going to bleep it up.
Yeah. So
I gotta say, they did a really amazing job with the dubbing. I know you guys have talked about it before, and I don't really know much about dubbing, but the way that they did it, knowing it was going to be an American and Italian and other dubbed languages, they did a great job in the dubbing. And I went back and kind of watched a little bit of the Italian version of the telephone, because the story was so different that I wanted to go back and see, like, how can these two different versions exist from the same film? And I feel like the dubbing is what makes that possible, because Mary is a completely different character just because the lines that she has. I mean, all of her behavior is exactly the same. All of her emotions are the same. But to me, they are successful in having her as a kind of just a lady that comes in and thinks that this person is crazy. Where she's a jilted lover in the other one. I mean, those are two totally different things. And then so it made me kind of think about the dubbing in the other stories too. And they was really, really well done.
Yeah, I forgot that part. In the Italian version, he was dating Mary and dumped Mary for Rosie. So there is or no,
that's the American version.
That's the American version.
Right.
So there is sort of a motive for her to come after her in a for revenge. That's which is kind of nice. So I'm going to try to stop saying this all the time, but in the commentary for the English version, Lucas was talking about the dubbing, and he said because this was going to get released in so many different languages, they had to go to kind of a rhythmic type of dialogue to fit a lot of different stuff, where a lot of times they do that sort of phonetic repeating of the dialogue so it'll match. And so I don't know, it still looks like it matches to me, but I hadn't heard of that before, so I didn't know. It's something I might have to look up. But
I've heard people mention that there's different ways that people had done, if they knew that something was going to be dubbed, that the actors spoke their lines differently, but it's really hard for me to imagine what that would actually look like. So I'm not sure what that looks like, but the dubbing was really
good. It looked very good, I thought. Yeah. Okay, we ready to go on to the Wurdulak?
Yeah, we got a lot out of the section that we thought was the weakest of the three. So.
Yes. So there's.
Now we go to
I just
maybe the best.
wanted to cover a few names here. So we had the family, right? That lives in this incredibly picturesque and house that wants to be photographed by Bava.
Yes.
A lot of different lightings. And the family, I think it's two brothers and a sister and the wife of one of the brothers. Did I get that right? So the two brothers are fairly minor. And then Boris Karloff, or Gorka, is the father. And Rika Dielina plays the one brother's wife and the mother of the grandson. And then Susie Anderson plays the sister, and Mark Damon is the traveler that shows up after he finds the dead body, the other dead Wurdulak that Gorka killed, right?
And Susie Anderson looks like she was made to be in a Bava movie. She's just got she's fair, she's angelic. She needs to be put into a scary, decaying, but still beautiful, colorful mansion with shadows and cobwebs and all kinds of things. I mean, wow, what a look.
And then Massimo Righi plays Pietro, and Glauco Onorato plays Giorgio. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I mean, with what Bill was saying about, he definitely has that aesthetic, and especially makeup wise, like she was so gorgeous. She had the face for this specific film. And it was funny because Dominic, he said, is she a vampire? Like in the beginning, like when
she's too pretty to be human. She doesn't look like a Russian peasant, that's for sure.
Yes, no, so pretty. She looks so, mysterious in a way. And then for me, as a lady that likes makeup and doing makeup and makeup artistry and stuff, is that the cat eye I love throughout the film is seeing and being pulled off by each individual actress, and especially her. I loved it, and I felt like it was just, her eyes were really suitable with the cat eye look. I just love it. I love when I can see women pull that cat eye liner.
I agree with you 100%. My eyes are not made for that, but I associate it with Italian screen women, and every single woman in every one of these, except for the dead cat lady. But they had that amazing eye makeup and the muted lip color and the just barely no flesh really in their cheeks. But I was totally sucked into the cat eye. It's amazing. Totally jealous of that.
I didn't even know that was a thing, so here I am. I mean, I could see it now, but I didn't know it was actually,
If you want to know about good makeup in movies, don't talk to me. Talk to them.
So
strictly on. I'll do this one. I'll do the severed head. But when it comes to making the actresses look like angels,
I think
Whitney.
You guys tell me. So just real quickly, the differences in the two versions. The English or the American version was longer and had a longer piece at the front end of what is Mark Damon's character, Vladimir, of him riding up, and then he looks up on the hill and sees a horse on the hill, and then the shot changes and shows a body lying over the horse with a knife sticking out of it. And then he finally goes up and finds it, and the horse is standing next to the body laying on the ground. Well, all that intermediate stuff is taken out. He just comes upon this body laying on the ground and the horse standing by it in the Italian version. So I don't know. I don't think it's a lot of time, but it's kind of.
It's not a lot, but it actually works well because isn't it the English version? I watched the Italian version today. Isn't it the English version that also they did for the ending of this sequence, the horse running away?
Yes.
So that kind of works.
At the end of it, yeah. Yeah, because that, Anyway,
as much as I miss Karloff's voice, and I do, oh my God, the visuals in this. I think if I'm not wrong, this is the last time Karloff got to play a monster. He played mad scientists and elderly, Van Helsing types, and Targets was probably his last really good movie. But I think this is the last time he got to play a really iconic monster that, the kind of face you could put on the cover of Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Right.
well,
Knocked it out of the park too. Oh, look at that bottom picture. I mean, that's what we say. The colors don't make sense necessarily. I mean, why is there red and purples and everything else? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In the universe that this story takes place in, if you're just walking through the woods, there's going to be yellows and greens and purples, and it's matching your mood or whatever. Totally buy into it.
And the fur is all matted, like around the top of his coat and in his hair. I like got sucked into every crack and crevice on his face when he was talking. It's amazing.
Disturbing. I think.
Uh-oh. I think they figured me out.
Danger.
Nope, they're going.
I pulled some Karloff stuff too. All of these are just amazing, and they're all examples of the kind of stuff Bava does. The way that he shoots things in shadow and light and filters, and
such a haunted madness. And this is so one of the things you think, again, 1963. In 1963, the good guys always won and the bad guys always lost in horror movies. And that doesn't happen in this story. Evil wins. Evil 100% wins and good 100% loses. There's no, this is kind of a gut punch. And yet, if you look at it from a certain point of view, I mean, the Karloff character is a monster. He's a vampire. But unlike most vampires, his goal is not just to drink the blood of his victims. He's trying to bring his family over to be with him.
Yes.
So that they will, at the end of it, they're still a family. They're just a family of vampires. But in a weird, the idea that he only kills the ones he loves, it's an unusual idea for a monster even to love.
Yeah. That was so intriguing, was a vampire, an evil, a bad guy who only takes for the ones he loves. That just blows me away.
It was
just the concept.
Especially to see how he snatched up his own grandson and to do all of that. And Dominic watching that, he's like, that's his grandpa. Like he couldn't really think that. Like, no.
Yeah.
The looks, I think this is maybe one of his, this is the most disturbing scene I'd seen from Karloff, I think, before this was when he smothers Lugosi in The Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
That I thought was just, but he does that over and over and over and over again in this one. His looks, his eyes, the lighting is a combination of that.
And you could read a lot into it. I see almost some regret.
Yeah.
Especially like that bottom shot, although he's
almost kind of fear driven.
Yeah, and it's a strategic move too, because by getting the kid, he's gotten the mom too. Yeah. That's a given. So he's picking them off logically.
Whoops, I'm sorry. And with
the mom, the husband too, because she got him to stop killing this, killing the son, and so the son is back now. The only one they lost was his other son. That's the only one that the first son was able to save from returning.
Oh, by the way, one little bit of trivia: the wax, the severed head, both the severed head in this and the scary ghost in the last story, that hideous face, was actually sculpted by Mario Bava's father, who was one of the first and maybe the first Italian special effects technicians.
Is it Eugenio? Is that?
Yes, Eugenio. And apparently doesn't get the credit he may deserve for having created a number of special effects techniques that became, big. The Bavas are amazing. 3 generations. Liberto Bava also, Mario's son did some pretty notable horror movies too.
So the scene where he's trying to grab his grandson, is the scene where in the English version, and his voice looks like he's really saying that. Says, "Don't I get to fondle my grandson?" And
and
I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was a different time.
well, and fondle can mean two different things.
Yeah,
It can.
But considering where we're going, it does have a definite double meaning in there. And then the shot that you had, this one here on the bottom holding the head up, that I do not believe is in the English version. I think it shows him, he grabs the head in the sack and you see the hair in his hand, and he just tells him to go hang it on the post, and then you see it out on the post. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was funny was seeing that, and my nephew's trying to make it out when he's seeing him pull that from the sack. He's like, "Is that a head?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Well, did he catch when Mark Damon or Vladimir lifted the body up, and you saw that?
Just for a brief.
You saw the stub of the neck for just a split second. Did he see that?
Yeah.
That's.
Put two and two together.
Yeah.
I think we
That's
got.
great.
I think we.
Yeah, I think that's all. Just beautifully shot, so atmospheric. Great use of light and color. I mean, unlike the first story, well lit and everything, but the use of color was limited. In this one, it's crazy pants time. It's just beautiful.
So I think, anyway, this is the whole thing with the grandson is, to me, this the really creepy part of the story.
And then he comes back, which is like it's straight out of, we did that. We saw that again in Salem's Lot and a whole bunch of other things.
That shot of him on the door. Yeah.
Yes, that I automatically thought of Salem's Lot when I saw the child like approach the window in that shot. Yeah.
Why would you let me in? You're evil.
Oh yeah, and let me in.
It made me think of Let Me In. Yeah.
That yes. Oh my. And
then the other part, it ends up being sort of a showcase for atmospheric setting, is that the ruins that Mark Damon and Susie Anderson go to, walking through it, finding the skull. You have to, and I don't know what that was supposed to be, but
I think the setting was supposed to be a convent.
Okay.
I think so too. Yeah, I think he comments on it, or it says something.
So that's another thing too. All the stories here take place in places where you feel like you should be safe. Your own apartment,
right?
A convent, a home. It's all evil is invading a supposedly safe place.
And I couldn't explain to my nephews because they were like, "Is that a castle? Is that what used to be a castle?" I'm like, "No, it's kind of like church, but not really." So
it's not obvious, I guess. Yeah. Well, and then again, and I'm going to do it one more time, and probably more.
Listen, if you're going to talk about Bava, quote Tim Lucas, because there's no one who knows more than Tim Lucas.
Lucas said that Bava's original concept for this was to show fear and horror in one generation, the previous generation, and then sort of a folk tale farther back. So that's the difference. The drop of water is farther back than the telephone, and the Wurdulak is farther back than either one of those.
So would that mean like the continued presence of evil, like throughout generations? Or
he didn't really get to the details, because he said also he kind of felt like, and he wanted those in that sequence, but that he figured, and it didn't end up in that sequence. So he thinks he decided to sort of give up on that as a structure, because once you have the anthology pieces done, it usually makes sense to have one. Their placement kind of makes sense,
Yeah.
So they don't go in chronological order in either version, I don't think.
I don't think so.
Because that is an interesting thing now that you mention it, because you do have the modern, and then you have the older generation mystic in the drop of water.
And they still had a telephone, but it was a pretty ancient telephone, right?
And then more going back to a folk kind of rural. Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't picked up on that, but yeah.
So I think we got most of those. Let's anything else we want to say about this?
It's beautiful. I just love this scene.
It's absolutely beautiful.
It's not, you think, gee, they could have made a full-length feature out of this, and they could have, but I think it tells the story it needs to tell in the time it took. Good. So I think it's actually good that they, it tells its story well. You could have added it out.
The Italian version is like maybe 5 minutes shorter, and I think it's a little more concise, a little leaner. I like some of the shots they have in the English version of the horse on the hill and revealing little pieces. But
all three of these are pretty simple, straightforward, easy to explain stories. Bava was not one for dense plotting and all that other stuff, which I like, but that's okay with these.
There's two things I'd like to, and it's my youngest nephew with what he had to say. And what really got me with the child with the American version is he's saying like, I'm cold, let me in, I'm cold.
Mama.
Not sitting next to me repeating these words, I'm cold, let me in, I'm cold. Oh my God, you're really
creeping me out here, kid.
He's practicing. He's practicing his lines,
Yes, it was fun. He likes to age like, I'm cold, let me in. Where's the end seeing that horse get away? He's like, yay!
Yes.
That's good. Yeah.
I love it so much.
That's cool.
Yes.
All right. So the drop of water.
Look at that.
This has some amazing,
This was my favorite one of all of the three. This is my favorite one.
Oh, and cats everywhere.
Yeah, I've got two cats fighting behind me. You can hear them hissing. Knock it off, you two. like they know what I'm saying. Yeah, you got a creepy decaying place with dolls and cats. It's like, if I walked into that, I'd be like, nope, just turn around and walk right back from whence I came. It's beautiful.
It's great.
So we have a couple of people. It's Jacqueline Peru plays the nurse, I guess. Her name is Helen, but she comes the blonde here in the bottom picture, and she's called by the maid for this medium because she's freaked out and wants her to come, and I'm not touching it. You're a nurse, you come do it. So I guess so she goes over there, and that house was just. How much of a story is he telling with that house?
House.
The art direction is amazing. And and he would see this one of his last films, Lisa and the Devil. It really reminded me a lot of this in that he makes decay look kind of beautiful. That all this stuff is falling apart, but the colors and everything have a beauty of their own in this fading what was once obviously just immaculate and good taste and everything else. Now it's just sort of crumbling away.
So
that same feeling that you're talking about was also in Helen's apartment because there was the decay in the walls, and that was just part of the coziness, I guess you would say, in a weird way, of her place. But the dolls and what the heck was on I don't know what was on the floor of this house. The paintings were askew. Yeah, the cobwebs, the dust. I mean, it was thick. Crazy.
Very unkempt.
And
oh, I love that lady.
Scariest ghost ever.
Oh my God. Yeah, she's scared the crap out of him.
He does make a lot of use of zooms in this movie, and I think almost every segment. But they seem effective to me. I never thought, oh God, there's another zoom. I thought, it was just really doing what my eyes wanted to do. She Helen goes and she's going to change the the corpse or the cadaver into her burial gown, I guess, and shoes, and notices this expensive ring and takes it off her finger. And as soon as she takes it off her finger, we start seeing this fly come and land on her finger, and we start getting these drips of water, right? There's in her house, it's the drips of water on that plate or whatever's underneath the side table that she tips over when the hand flops on her. Yeah. So she takes the ring home, and then she gets home and she's starting to I don't know, I thought it was interesting. She had that sort of like a coffee pot, teapot kind of thing sitting on the small, I assume it's coal or wood burning stove, and it's just sort of always sort of steaming. And I was wondering if that was what they did for sort of humidifier type thing back then. She would hold her hands over it sometimes to warm her hands, but it had been in there while she was gone. It was still on it. And then she starts seeing the fly, and there's drips everywhere, right? And it's just totally freaking her out. And she is so good in this. I mean, the fright that she gets on her face when she sees when the old woman shows up in her. Does she show up in her bed first, or is it sitting in a chair?
Well, there was a rocking chair. I can't remember which was first.
I think it was a bed first, and then the rocking chair, and then she's walking towards her. And there's no dialogue. Yeah.
I think it was the bed first because, like I said, I think this was the story that got Dominic hooked. And then we're watching this, and he's like, I gotta pee. And then he gets up, and then he stands up, sits back down because he sees her sitting up in the bed.
That's perfect.
He started to scream, like, it's so scary.
Started to leave, but
I love it.
He started.
I can't wait.
It was great.
So what did he? What did the woman's face get him the first time they showed up?
It did, but funny thing is when we see the face, because we're introduced to it before, the sit up and everything, and it's the face when he starts seeing. He's like, oh, she's got a creepy face, Whitney, Aunt Whitney. Like, yeah. And then he starts like, something bad's gonna happen, right? Well, let's watch and we'll see.
So you're totally the cool aunt in this family. You're like the cool aunt that all the kids are going to want to hang out with.
I don't know. It's kind of.
Oh, I know.
That might change.
If I'd had an aunt anything like you, I mean, I had some cool aunts. But they weren't so cool when it was horror movies, because my sister and I would watch like a horror movie and we'd keep saying, turn the channel, and they'd turn it, and then we'd like, turn it back. And at some point they said, one more time, you asked me one more time, I'm turning off the TV. And then we just had to clutch each other and watch the rest of the Blob or whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, your nephew's pretty cool, because I would want to watch that stuff, and normally my folks wouldn't let me. So I'd watch the afternoon like Tarzan stuff, and even on that, if there was gorillas in there, I would run around the corner with my face in the corner.
Oh, me too.
And say, "Tell me when it's over." Well, let's change the channel. No, don't change the channel. It's like,
Are you mad?
That Dominic had this morning, like, oh my gosh, it's like, oh no, tell me when it's over. Oh, but it looks so cool.
Yeah, that's the conundrum.
And their thing is Godzilla. They love monsters. They love Godzilla the most. This is the first experience of Boris Karloff for them, most especially for Dominic, because he sat through all of this.
Very cool.
So proud.
That's a good start.
Awesome. That's awesome.
I wonder if he'll recognize his voice in the Grinch, if he watches or listens to the Grinch.
I'm going to say something when Christmas comes around. So yeah, I'm glad you brought
his voice is so distinctive, and it just makes me warm, I guess, for like when I hear his voice.
Yeah. What if he makes that connection halfway through? It's like, oh my God, it's the Wurdulak. Run, Cindy Lou Who, run.
Yeah. Well,
That's why I was like, I missed when I read when Jeff, when you had read, you were talking about the differences between the two versions, and he goes, but what's missing is Karloff's voice. I was like, wait, what? And then I listened to it and I was like, oh my God, his voice.
Well, that's what, and that again, that's what Lucas called it. He said these have come to be known as the version without Karloff's voice and the version with Karloff's voice. So anyway.
I started this version with the boys because that's going to stick with them, like what you said, Daphne, when I reintroduce the grunge and stuff. So I think this is going to be interesting for them back on, and then do the Italian version with them later.
later, yeah.
Yeah. So, and this has a very dark ending as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she ends up, Helen ends up strangling herself. Or I don't know, or the medium makes her strangle herself. I don't know. And has this sort of rictus on her face of fear. And there's a neighbor there who's telling the police, oh yeah, we found him. Oh, I cleared everybody out. We didn't change anything. I know how to act in situations like this. And then they find the scraped finger where the ring has been removed. And she's like, you know, the cops are looking at her, and then the face, one of the police officers is digging, you know, is, I don't know, looking for evidence, and her face kind of goes over and stares right at her.
The thing I really liked about this story was I totally kept thinking these are weird tales. These are weird tales when I was watching this, because just this weird kind of, I think Bill reminded me, it's called magical realism almost, but in like a really advanced, like really extreme way. But I love the subtleness of, like, first when she's in her apartment, when Helen's in her apartment afterwards, it's like, what's that noise? Oh, it could be the wind, or it could be cats, or it could be something else. And then she's kind of like suffocating. So she has her hand up there, loosening her shirt up, but then slowly her hand with the ring starts to, but it's all just like this slow kind of build where you see it happening, but it starts from this kind of more realistic place where you want to believe, you want to be with her, like this is just a bunch of nonsense, but then it just totally sucks her in.
And she's got a great apartment too. Actually, I've got some other stuff here. But
man,
there's like, she's getting like flashing greenish blue lights from one side, and the other side is kind of red or pink tinged. And then the cat, I think doesn't a cat show up in the window or something? And plus you're hearing the cat like scream.
You know, watching this movie, you think Bava must have been a cat person, and it was actually quite the opposite. Cats scared him. So that's why he put them in. He put in things that would scare him.
So I thought, and I think you had this one on here, Bill, but I love that top picture. There's so much in there. You've got the red light on one side, the kind of greeny blue on the other. You've got the hand reaching over her shoulder. She's scared to death of something right in front of her. It's gives me chills just looking at it.
You know, it just occurred to me, this ending, I don't know why this didn't occur to me earlier, but the ending where she strangles herself, he revisited that again in his last full-length movie, Shock, with Daria Nicolodi at the very end. Kind of spoiling the ending for people here, but with the paper cutter. So yeah, he wasn't above going back to some ideas again.
And that's when she starts to the woman, the medium's body is walking towards her, and the arms are outstretched, like as if going for her neck. And again, you got red on one side and green on the other side.
That's become a cliche when people want to imitate giallo, and you can do that just by putting a blue on one side and a red on the other. But there's a lot more artistry to it than just that. You have to be subtle about it to really make it not just look like a cartoon. You know, it was what someone said kind of made me think, these short stories. I mean, it's interesting that it holds together as a movie. The first one is like a short you'd have in one of those detective magazines. You know, there's nothing supernatural about it. It's just solving the mystery of who's the bad guy and all this. The second one is very much like a folklore fairy tale kind of story, which often had horrible endings. You know, they often clean them up for us. But when you hear some of those Grimm's fairy tales, they're grim indeed.
Mhm.
And then this one is kind of an EC comics sort of thing. It's you do something wrong and terrible things happen to you. This is the Old Testament revenge. You get the justice you bring on yourself. So, you know, three different ways of three different kinds of stories. They all work together here.
Well, the Wurdulak is like that too, in that, you know, at the very end, you could she doesn't actually say it, but Sedenka, like fixing eyes on Vladimir, could just as well said, and remember, we call back, you know, we drink the blood of the ones we love the most, and then go in for the kiss. That's like the unsaid line that turns it into an EC type.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. And then the woman on the bottom is Harriet Medin, Medin, the neighbor. And for the small part that she had, she was very good. And that's a look, I thought.
Yeah.
So a couple other, I just was looking at pictures that this stuff to me was like Bava. And some of these pictures we've already seen, but wow. It's just wow.
The stuff on the ones on the bottom, those archways remind me like a color version of Black Sunday. I don't know if he used that set before,
actually, part of that is part of the ruins is was used in Black Sunday.
Oh hell, I'd make every movie I ever made if I had something like that lying around.
Well, and the right side was a matte painting, and the left side is where the people would walk up and down that.
That's really beautiful.
It is. I love the ruins. Yeah, I question that too. It's like, hey, this is very familiar. It makes me think of the first time. Yeah, I think that's the first podcast I talked to you on, Bill. Was the
Black Sunday?
Was that it?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. That was shortly after.
That was a good one to start with.
You started. So
well, even the color of the sky reminds me of Planet of the Vampires, just the kind of going on forever color.
And that's a Bava thing. I guess YouTube knows me better than I think it does, because it suggested some obscure Western. I'm like, oh, okay. I started watching it, and it was directed by John Old or whatever, some name. And I'm watching it. I'm looking at and it's like, whoever this guy was, he must have watched a Mario Bava movie, because the background, the skies are blue. It was a Mario Bava movie. He made a couple of Westerns
under that name.
Under they just, and I was like, I gotta look. They're not the best. There was no budget, obviously, but they're pretty to look at. Better than most. Better than Billy the Kid versus Dracula.
Well, they really are captivating.
Go ahead, Whitney.
Oh, they're really captivating, and even for me I was so excited, like just seeing, like watching Dominic watching it, and he's like, wow, really scary.
That's good.
Pretty. Like seeing those words follow up with each other is kind of funny. Just seeing how a little kid could look at these sets and say, that's really scary. Oh, that's really pretty. I'm like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We got an artist's eye, I think.
Yeah.
10 more years, kid. We're going to make you watch Suspiria.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a shot too in the Wurdulak where Karloff, it's when he lures, Sadeko comes out and she's standing in that sort of corridor that's made on the left. And Gorka's face comes in between the camera and the glass, between the camera and the mat, and looks at her or sees her, as somebody peering in, watching her, and it looks odd. It just looks odd. It doesn't look like they screwed up. It just looks, it throws you off, right? Because the perspective is off a little bit. Cool stuff. This was another one. These are other ones that I just looked at. And again,
that's a hell of an intro of him like staggering toward the house. This, this dark figure of doom. it's not going to end well.
Walking across that bridge. I was trying to find a picture on that bridge, but I didn't see a good one, but I love that shot. Almost immediately when the bell quits ringing, after they say, even 1 second later,
Right.
and across the bridge he comes. And then having that kid on that last shot on the bottom.
That is creepy. I love it. That bottom shot is great.
Well, and when they're in the ruins and he says, your family all loves you best or whatever, you read, Daphne, that was a line from then. And you go to each one of the relatives and they're all creepy as all get out.
Yeah.
Blood dripping down their neck and stuff. Yeah. Family. All right. Well, we have to talk about the ending. Bill found these.
The balls on these people. I just can't believe. And no, American International. So I guess on the last day of shooting, the story goes, they got a note from AIP saying, it's too scary. Can you tone it down a little? And
it's
they're
too
like,
dark. It's too dark.
It's too dark. It's the last day of shooting. No, we can't do anything. And he came up with this on the spot and went to everyone and talked to him about it, and everyone told him it was a bad idea, except for Karloff, who was the one he was most nervous about talking to, because they had it was freezing, I guess, wherever they were shooting. His hotel was freezing. Karloff was in bad health. He later caught pneumonia, and Bava blamed himself for the rest of his life that he had wrecked Karloff's health, although I think Karloff was already on the way out. And Karloff was like, oh, we got to do this. Even though they were going to be blowing fans of cold air on him and everything else, He loved this idea. And I know there are people who hate it. They did not put it in the American version, and I can see that it is tonally completely out of kilter with the rest of this movie. This movie doesn't have a laugh to be found. And then this ending, which is, is it that they lost their nerve and they wanted to send the people home with, oh, it's just a joke, it's all pretend or what? But I think it's brilliant. I mean, and yeah, another thing ahead of its time. I can only think of a Jerry Lewis movie that at the end of the movie, basically Jerry Lewis turns to the camera and basically says, hey, it's all a movie. And then they pull back and there's set designers pulling the set apart and everything else. And this was so crazy. And also, it's a really good job. Damn, that looks terrific. These Italian guys just running in a circle with branches over their head. It looks ludicrous when you're pulled away, but when it was uptight, it sure looked like Boris Karloff. And he's sitting on this horse that is not a horse. It's not even a quarter of a horse. And at some point, I guess the guy whose job is to jostles it, and Karloff is like, whoa there, Nelly, and continues with his dialogue. And you're like, this is hysterical. This is so insane.
Yeah, I loved it too, and it made me. So then when I watched it again in the other version, then I'm watching the scene where he's riding the horse, and I'm thinking, I knew it wasn't a real horse, but I didn't think. I don't know. I just didn't go there. I didn't know how they did that, but I thought it was great. You see those guys running frantically in circles with these branches with leaves on it, and when you go back and look at it, it's like, that actually looked okay.
In the American version or in the Italian version, or both, do they both have the transitions between stories where Karloff is commenting on them?
The Italian does not.
Okay, that's what I thought, because it was interesting. It's another thing that was just kind of strange to me about these two movies, was that there was that stepping out of character, kind of alluding to movie making in some of those interludes where Karloff would like snap his fingers and he didn't disappear, and he snapped them again and they disappeared.
So there is a little bit of a joke in there.
But then the big, this finale at the end of the Italian, that's the big one, and that's the really
that's
crazy
what's weird.
It's just weird.
They didn't like. Yeah, if they didn't like it being so dark, why didn't they throw that in? That would have been great, because the music they play sounds like it would have been the end of like the Comedy of Terrors or something. the one with Price and Laurie and Karloff, and like it would have been the ending music. It's sort of like comic versions of all these
so
traditional
Bava did film the transitions, although he didn't use them in his own in the Italian cut. He filmed two of them. He filmed the one where the drop of water transition. He filmed the one with the phone, and then the last one was done by, and no one knows who did it. It was done by someone back in the United States. They got Karloff. They were using Karloff for one of those awful beach party movies. So they had him come out in a suit and tie and do something with some red and blue lighting to make it like the rest. But no one who's alive says that they did it. And so apparently it was someone who's passed on.
Well, they did that weird.
Did Bava want those transitions?
He was okay with them. I mean, he was like, no, that makes, that's an American thing to do, but he didn't think they were necessary for his.
Interesting.
And they did that thing where they
the order of things.
They had it, his head like surrounded by black velvet, like he was just appearing in the black at the. I think that's the beginning of the U.S. version. But then he morphs into a guy standing there like he's leading off episodes of Thriller or Alfred Hitchcock or something, But,
the other problem is they really couldn't use this thing for the end there because the American version has the Wurdulak in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And the drop of water is the last one. Am I wrong?
I
can't remember.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track.
It is, and I like wrote it down once, and then I thought, I think I screwed that up, and I looked again, and
because this is very clearly the end of the movie. So if you stick that one in the middle, and then the end of the movie, suddenly Karloff is back. And he's talking about in the original dialogue. So this is what's crazy. Apparently, nobody has the original sound of Karloff speaking his lines, and the Italian dubbing is not a perfect translation. They changed it around a bit. So they've hired people who are lip readers to go back and read his lips and make what they think it was. So it's like there are people more obsessed than we are.
What I wrote down is the Italian version is the telephone, the Wurdulak, and the drop of water. And the U.S. version is the drop of water, the telephone, and the Wurdulak.
Oh, well, maybe that makes more sense. That what?
So
yeah,
it does make more sense. Yeah, I know it was last. It does make more because I was just watching it, trying to find a quote before we started, and it does make that ending more sense that they just morphed out of that story and went back to it. But I like the Italian. I'm just gosh, too bad we couldn't
Frankenstein it together.
At some point you could, you should be able to digitally mix that stuff.
Put the Italian telephone in, just 100% that. Stick in the U.S. version of the Wurdulak, as long as you can maybe pretty up the colors a bit and get it more to the true vision that Bava had. And then, the last one is so dialogue free for the most part. Either 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I don't think they messed much with that one. So, there's a project.
The perfect movie.
It's like moved way up in my version of films. Any final thoughts about this?
Thanks for having me on. I love talking about it.
Thanks for showing up on the short notice, and I just
it's good to see you guys too. I hardly ever get to see Whitney.
We missed you.
Well, it's good to see you.
Yeah, you look like you're doing great. Glad you're infecting the next generation of horror fans.
I was not expecting it to be what it was this morning. I thought I was going to be alone watching this one, but you're awake and you're like, "Oh, what's this?"
Awesome.
Well, that's the best thing. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I mean, honestly, I hate that Chad's not here, but he's the reason why. He's part of the reason why that this kind of stuck into their faces. Hey, Chad, I got to tell him, he's responsible for this being the experience that I had with my nephew.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad, for that.
And as a tone of thanks,
thank
Jeff
you.
is going to make him watch The Children from 1980. That's going to be a lot of fun for our Chad.
Is that maybe I'll have to switch that.
Oh no, come on, you can take it.
Well, they're not crawling
They're not crawling.
for the most part. All right. It's only because we had a listener that brought up that they suggested that a while ago and thought that I ignored it because I didn't like Evil Children, but it was really because at the time I couldn't find it anywhere streaming that wasn't going to
We
cost.
love Evil Children. Hey,
That's
the more the
money, so.
merrier.
Well, we do have some feedback.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know. We have some, if you guys are there to read. One is more from Jerry Chandler on the Green Slime, episode 105.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Who wants to read that?
I'll read it. I've known Jerry forever. Jerry Chandler again. In response to Chad's joking comments, sadly, at least by the standards of many people, my expressed love for the Green Slime has nothing to do with Doc. As Bill Mulligan can attest, I have been espousing my love for that film and its theme for longer than Bill and I have known each other, telling anyone who would listen that they have to watch it. This is 100% accurate. I have owned it on VHS, DVD, and now Blu-ray. And as my wife and kids can attest, I will end up throwing it in the player and watching it more than once or twice every year. I can't help it. It's a sickness.
Oh, wow.
There's not a lie to be found in that paragraph.
Oh, my God.
Acceptance is, yeah. It's a key to
Anyone who will
recovery.
listen.
Then we had one from Ralph Miller on Facebook.
Says,
Anybody?
best movie theme song ever. There, said it. And I really mean it. Pet Cemetery by the Ramones is a keeper too. I agree.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Song.
Thanks.
Ralph speaks the
Thanks,
truth
Ralph.
as well.
And Ralph, we've had Ralph on the 80s, and we've had
Yeah.
Ralph on classic era.
Ralph's a good guy.
Special effects guy, very knowledgeable. Appreciate it, Ralph. We agree. And then I have to ask this beforehand, but who of you had ever heard of Boney M?
Rah, rah, Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen.
You knew that before,
Oh, yeah.
Bill?
The
Oh,
song?
yeah. The song,
Yeah.
sure.
Even the
Yeah.
group, Boney M.
I hadn't.
I don't know
Never
that
heard
they did
of
a whole lot of other hits other than that one, but
Yeah, I only know that one song, and I just remember watching the music video, that live, that live
Yeah.
video or whatever, and that whole
With the-
choreography, outfits. It was just,
With
I
the
remember
pants
how-
and no shirt, and yeah.
yeah.
It was
a
the first
terrible
time
time for
me,
music.
and it blew me away.
I had never even heard of them, and I looked them up later and found out they were sort of a manufactured band, like kind of like Milli Vanilli. That
yeah.
they probably, the people doing the dance, doing it on screen live, probably weren't singing. But anyway, so Alistair had said this in his comment on Rasputin the Mad Monk, episode 106. Alistair had made up a little thing, rah rah, Grue team ever or something, and then another line that kind of went like that. And I had no idea where he was coming from until I watched that. And now he says, rah rah. And as a bonus, here are some costume suggestions for the Grue-Crew's next appearance too.
Uh-oh.
And I think it was that same video, if I remember right. I have to check it out quickly here. Oh, of course, I got a 15-second ad. If it's the same one, because it is the same one. It is the Boney M. Rasputin
Yeah.
thing.
Proof that
And
you can make
then-
a song
'cause
about anything.
Well, I made the comment when he commented about, and no references to Boney M. Glad you didn't go for the low-hanging fruit, and so I made and then another guy, Greg Miller, commented, and he said, and I commented to the two of them and said, funny how a Kiwi and an Aussie are the only ones that made comments about Boney M. Greg Miller replies, I can't speak for Alistair, but Boney M were quite popular in Australia when I was young. Plus, I use this song to stir a friend of mine with the surname Rasmussen. He never looks impressed when the words rah-rah pass my lips.
Yeah, that's always a weird thing when some fairly obscure in America band, you find that they were a huge hit in Czechoslovakia. Or it's like, how did they even get there, and why did it, something connected with the folks.
Late 70s, early 80s, I could have totally missed them.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked if you guys had ever heard of them. I never heard them before that. And finally, Plan 9 from Outer Space 107, the last episode.
Well, I guess here's another Jerry Chandler comment.
And a couple of comments. He's replying to himself.
Well, he'll do that. Jerry Chandler says, I love this film. It's horribly done, but it was actually several good ideas pulled together in such a way that had Wood been a better filmmaker, it could have been a well-respected little cult film. Wood was a good story idea guy and maybe a good producer, but damn, he just wasn't a good writer or filmmaker. Oh, and as for Chad and his lovely impersonations of me, forget movies about severed hands. I'm now officially petitioning that Decades of Horror, the 1980s, schedule the Loch Ness Horror for review. What did I do to deserve this? And Chad is required to be on that episode. Not that anyone else will join the petition or care, but it's now officially out there. After he watches it, you can just bump it from the schedule.
Right.
If you want to be really nice about it, have him review the version found on YouTube. That's a recording of the time Commander USA's Groovy Movies hosted the movie. It won't make the movie any better, but the bumper bit and the vintage TV commercials are fun enough to take the sting off of the brain cell killing nature of the film.
No, I watched some of
see,
that.
Chad,
And,
see?
Commander USA is quite the experience.
I love
as a movie host.
Legion of Decency.
Yeah, so he does this all the time. Like when we were having Jerry on Classic Era, he made me promise to tell Chad the movie was The Crawling Hand until right before we did it, which was actually The Black Scorpion.
Oh.
Now, I didn't do that. I'm sorry, Jerry, but
yes.
I'm loyal to Chad. He's an
Chad
OG
knows where you live.
Guy, so this one too, you just want to make Chad watch Loch Ness Horror, and then we can change movies, I guess. Right?
So bad. It's so terrible. It's it's Larry Buchanan's best movie. But so what?
All right. Well, I think that's it.
Yeah. So this was what, an hour and 45 minutes or something? It's like
no, not hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
Right
see,
we started.
Me on, you got off easy.
And we didn't really, I often go off the deep end into the actor's background, so we didn't do that at all, and we could have, because there was a lot of information like this. Here I go. The woman Millie, who played the maid in The Drop of Water, she was apparently a star in Italy. Musical. Started out as a musical star and then moved into movies. All right. That's it for this episode, but every 2 weeks.
One thing before we go, you said music. For some reason, I read or heard somewhere that, speaking of music, Ozzy Osbourne was inspired by this film for his band Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, yeah.
So,
absolutely true.
Legend, I guess. And
yeah. I know, it's so cool.
Yeah. But there's a problem with this. So when I went on to watch it, and I just, pressed the little button and said to my Roku, Black Sabbath, it's like starting Pandora. Like, no, don't start Pandora. You're drunk, Roku.
Well, somewhere I'm sorry, Whitney.
No, I said I'm a metal fan, so I love it. I love hearing about
when
music meets with whatever is associated with films. I love hearing it.
I actually have a Black Sabbath album, the one with is it Paranoia, War Pigs, yes. Iron Man. That came out, I think, when I was in high school, and I absolutely loved that. Played the hell out of it, but that's all of them. The only
I
one
can
I
see
have.
you stomping around the high school hallway, 6'2", da na 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 na. Yeah,
Love it.
Yeah, we played that riding to school in my friend's Corvair convertible. we were punks. We were OGs, right?
hardcore.
Well-known fact too is that Corvair's the oil line leaked onto the heater duct, so it always smelled like burnt oil, or
It's a good safety feature.
in the
Oh
winter.
my goodness.
All right, I'm sorry. That's
You
it for
were
this
punk.
episode.
That's totally
And every
punk.
2 weeks,
Yeah.
every 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on a specific film released between 1920 and 1969. Next up, one I picked is Hammer's horror of Dracula.
Oh.
And I believe, I don't know if I should say this or not. I'm going to say this because I could probably cut it if it doesn't come true. But I have agreement from Richard Clemenson to join us, the owner, publisher, editor of Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, wow. Well,
And
that's going to be definitely worth listening
their
to.
last episode was focused on the horror of Dracula. So, their last episode, their last magazine, last issue.
That may be the best horror magazine being published now.
Oh my God, it's a book. Every issue is a book.
It's fantastic.
It's like
And
100 pages of fine print. And
Wow.
huge reference. All right. I'm excited about that. He did a bunch of those, the Men of Hammer or the whatever that are in all their Blu-ray extras. All right. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, alert, all that stuff. Catch us again here in 2 weeks for another great horror movie, as only decades of horror can do it. Thank you all so much. Chad, wherefore art thou, Chad? This is our train's leaving the station. Say goodnight.
Good night.
Night.
Gruesome Magazine.